Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? If not, huh?
Yeah, keep it close.
They said it's, oh, there we go. Wow. Okay. Now, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Now, I'm going to apologize to you first because I'm going to walk around. One, I can't stand still normally, and two, standing in place, I've got a back issue from sitting all the time, I think. So I'm going to probably be walking around a little bit. And if you need me to like harangue me, just give me a sign and I'll come back. So I'm going to start with, because it was brought up by the gentleman who came up and gave the invocation, that he was excited about the notice in the paper about 38 Special. How many of you in here, before he said it, knew that 38 Special was a rock band? And how many of you in here know who the founder and lead singer of 38 Special was? All right, fewer hands. So the gentleman's name, well, the man's name, I don't know him, so I won't call him a gentleman. The man's name that started 38 Special is, I'm thinking Ronnie. I'm going to get it. It's either Ronnie or Donnie Van Zant. It's Ronnie. Somebody told me. So who knows who his brother was? Okay, two more. His brother was Donnie, who formed and was lead singer for the legendary Southern rock band Leonard Skinner. Now, you're sitting there thinking, God, I thought he was going to talk about recovery and issues like that, and here we are talking about ancient rock trivia. So, in court, and this is a repeat customer, unfortunately. I had a gentleman in, well, again, I'll say a man because I don't know him more than his criminal history, but I had a man in my court whose last name was Van Zant. And for those of you who know me, know that I take what I do very seriously. I don't take myself very seriously. I think that's probably one reason that I can do and enjoy the job that I have. So I look down from the bench. This man's entering a plea to some criminal charge that he's got, and I say, "Are you a family member of that Van Zant?" And to my surprise, he says yes. So I've got in front of me a relative of the Van Zants. So I asked him. I said, "Did you know Ronnie or Donnie?" He said, "Yes, absolutely." He said, "My dad went on the road with them and was one of their roadies, and I got to go with them as well." So that's sort of the connection. When he said 38 Special, I thought, I'll give them that little tidbit. What I want to talk about today, I want to talk just a little bit about my recovery court, just to let you kind of know where we are and what we're doing. But I want to spend the majority of my time, and I'm not sure how much that is. You just stopped me. When at 1 o'clock. Okay. We'll spend the majority of my time letting you know about this regional recovery center that we're trying to get started, and then give some time for you to ask questions. And when you ask questions, whether it's recovery court, this center, or whatever else you want to talk about, I'll answer it if I can. And that means if I know it and can say it, I will. If I know it and can't say it, I'll tell you. And if I don't know it, I'll tell you. Anyway, so I started my recovery court in Sullivan County, the Sullivan County Felony Recovery Court, back in 2015 is when we got started. We currently have around 18 to 20 participants. We have graduated probably, it's going to seem like a low number, but I'll explain it in a minute, but we've probably graduated 10 or 12 from my court. We've had a lot, and I think this is representative, we've had a lot of individuals who, they tell me that they want recovery, and we do the assessment, and they seem like an appropriate person for recovery, but at the end of the day, they just want it out of jail. And when that happens, they'll typically take off before they get through the first inpatient program that I put them in. And all but about 4 or 5, they haven't run far enough that we couldn't get them. So I think the program's a success, and I will tell you that just Wednesday night, we had a joint graduation from the 1st Judicial District, obviously the 2nd, and then the Washington County, Tennessee Misdemeanor Recovery Court, and we graduated 6 between all 3 of our courts. And you look out at the audience, and you've got the participants, and I've basically required all of my participants to go because I thought it was important that they see that there actually is a light at the end of the tunnel that's not a freight train coming straight at them. But you look out at the graduates and their family members, and what struck me Wednesday evening was that there were a whole group of people who, but for recovery court, and I'm going to talk about the dynamics of recovery court here in just a second, but for the opportunity, let me say it that way, that recovery court provided, they would either be dead or somewhere in prison or in our county jail. And the 6 individuals and all the participants in my court, and of course I don't know who the participants were in the other courts, but those folks, I believe, have realized that there's more to life than getting high. And there's more to life than stealing and being out here and ripping and running in order to get high. So one of the things that I commented there, and I want to share with you, is that with respect to the young man who graduated, he's been sober for over a year. He hasn't committed any new offenses. He's been in our program about 2 years. And I'm going to tell you right now, COVID was very difficult for these folks. The isolation, not being able to come to court, not being able to go to in-person meetings for the recovery IOP and those things, really, really affected these participants more than the average person. And I think it's pretty widely recognized that just the average person has had issues dealing with the isolation that COVID has brought about. But I was talking about the accomplishments that Michael had. And one of the biggest ones is that he has a career with the Robinette Company up in Bristol. He's not slinging burgers at a fast food restaurant on a temporary basis, but he's been given an opportunity for a career, to make a decent wage, to support himself and his family. So it struck me that what Michael and the other graduates realized is that they have a life worth living. Not just seeking drugs, not just committing crime to get more drugs. You okay?
I'm good.
Okay. I was going to have to ask if there's a doctor in the house. But, huh?
He might die.
Oh. I'm going to leave that one right there. But so good things are coming out of the local, my recovery court, Judge Street and Judge Rice's recovery court in the 1st District in Carter County, and I believe it's Judge Arnold, the General Sessions Judge in Washington County, that oversees the misdemeanor court over there. Let's talk quickly about this regional program that you may have heard about and you may not. So to get someone inpatient for more than 28 days, we have to send them to either Nashville, or I think Hohenwald is just past Nashville, between Nashville and Memphis. Do what?
Owen Wall's way past Nashville,
Okay.
down south.
All right. So it's okay. I came across. I have to go to a conference next week, and I have to go to a state park that's south of Jackson. So when I was looking at the route, that's probably where I saw it, because it's south and west of Nashville. But so if we're going to get someone in inpatient long-term treatment, we have to send them way away. Now, there is an inpatient recovery court that is in Morgan County, and it's at part of the old, I just forgot they have a distillery there now. Brushy Mountain. It's part of the old Brushy Mountain complex. It's not the part that goes back into the mountain. It's around sort of the other side of the ridge where they had an annex, and they've turned that into a residential drug court. But for me to get a participant in there, it takes probably about 9 months to a year. That's how big the need is and what the waiting list is. So Judge Street, Judge Rice, and I began talking probably a year and a half to 2 years ago about, is there somewhere around East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee, that we could put a residential recovery court that would operate similar to Morgan County. And in Morgan County, the person lives at the facility, they've received the treatment at the facility, they're required to do work and chores around the facility. They have a wood shop and like a machine shop where they can do projects and then take it out and sell their projects and whatever. So at first, we found out that the Green Valley facility was sitting empty in Greenville. And I didn't get to go, but Judge Street, Judge Rice, several legislators, and several people from the state all met down there to talk about turning that facility into an inpatient recovery court. Well, apparently that facility, what you see of it along Highway 19 or 11, I think it's 11E, when you're going into Greenville, you'll see it there on the left. Well, that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. That's a 300 plus acre facility, and let's say 250 of those acres are leased out to farmers down there. That whole property is embroiled in some sort of a federal lawsuit, and I'm not sure what the details of that are. But come right down to it, that facility is just going to sit there empty. Nobody from the state, nobody from the federal government was willing to even talk to us about trying to turn that into a treatment facility. That, coupled with the fact that they told us it would take at least $5 million to rehab it and get it up to where you could have people live there now, because it's been sitting empty as long as it has. So we put it on the back burner. We kept talking to people at conferences and every chance that we could get about the need for residential inpatient treatment in the form of a recovery court in Upper East Tennessee. So fast forward to about August of last year, and we find out that the Tennessee Department of Corrections was going to shutter the Roan Mountain Work Camp. They had, of course, you've got the main prison in Mountain City, and then they had the Roan Mountain Work Camp, which housed, at the time it closed, 44 inmates that would go out every day and do work in the community. So what they did is they sent those 44 back to the main prison. They still have the program to go out and have the people work, but they're just not housing them off-site. Now, TDOC did this even though just a year or two before, they spent several $100,000 updating and upgrading that facility. When I went up there in September, it was right before the inmates were going to be moved, so they still had some of the inmates there, but it was in pristine condition. Of course, part of that is because they had the inmates painting and keeping it up and keeping it clean. It's a 185 bed facility. Now, I'm definitely going to tell you that we're not going to try to get 185 people in there on day one, because that would be overwhelming. But it's a domiciliary style prison. It's not cells with bars for doors. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to get this facility. When I went up there, we had Senator Lundberg, several representatives, mainly the ones I remember are Hicks and Alexander from over in the first, I don't know what district they are in, but the first judicial district, Washington County area. Had the mayor of Carter County there, and had a bunch of people from TDOC. And at that time, they were talking about potentially selling that building to us. And I don't know what that price would have been. And we were trying to get with the governor's office to talk about potentially them leasing the building to us. That way the state still owns it. If our program works, great, and if not, the state can then turn it over to General Services and sell it. Well, we could never get an audience with the governor. And Mayor Woodby in Carter County, there's a facility across from the airport, which was the Great Lakes Laboratory facility from way back in the day. And that's been a multitude of different things, and I think now it's nothing. It's just sitting there. So one of the governor's initiatives was for vocational tech type material to be taught to our high school students. And Mayor Woodby has come up with a plan that she's going to turn the Great Lakes facility into a vocational education facility for all the high schools in Carter County to come down there and have trades taught to these students. Welding, HVAC, cosmetology, and a whole plethora of other things. And she approached Judge Street and Judge Rice and said, you know, if we get this treatment facility going, why couldn't we bring, when the high school kids are not there, why couldn't we bring the folks in the treatment program down here and teach them these same trades so that when they're finished with the program, they've got a certificate for a trade? And we thought that was a great idea. And once the governor's office heard of that connection, it was, when I say full steam ahead, I mean it was full steam ahead. And from what I understand, the governor turned to the deputy governor, and I think it's Ely, and said, make this happen. So we're very optimistic that we're going to get that facility for a $1 a year lease. Now, Mayor Schul said, well, I wonder why TDOC moved those 44 people back up to the prison after spending money to rehab and update the facility. It's because, in my opinion, that facility has a wastewater treatment plant on site, which is a great thing, except that it's not in great working order. And it's going to cost a couple $1 million to get it to where it needs to be. And TDOC didn't want to spend that money. But so part of the money that we were trying to get out of the Baby Doe settlement, we thought we would have to set aside to fix the treatment plant. Well, when Deputy Governor Ely contacted us, we expressed that concern, and he said, don't you worry about it. There's money in the state. We'll have the treatment part fixed when you go in. So what Judge Street, Judge Rice, and I have been doing over the last several months, and you've probably seen this in the paper, is we've been going to the county commissions, the city governmental bodies, who were all plaintiffs in the Baby Doe lawsuit. How many of you know about the Baby Doe lawsuit? Everybody? Not everybody. So District Attorney Barry Staubus, who I think talked to you a week or so ago, along with the district attorneys from the 1st District and the 3rd District, filed a lawsuit against Big Pharma on behalf of Baby Doe, who was born opiate addicted at the Johnson City Medical Center. Baby Doe is a real person. And after several years of that lawsuit being on file, they reached a settlement for $35 million. Now, during the course of the lawsuit, the defendant tried to get it dismissed because the DAs weren't the proper plaintiffs. And what they had to do was go to the county governing bodies, the city legislative bodies in the 9 counties that make up Upper East Tennessee to see if they wanted to participate, and if they did, they were substituted in as plaintiffs. So when the settlement came down, after the lawyers got their money and the expenses, it went from 35 to 21 million. So that 21 million was distributed and has already been paid out and put in the accounts of these government entities. We've gone around to Carter, Washington, Sullivan, Greene, Hamlin, Hawkins, City of Kingsport, Town of Unicoi, and we've presented to them the idea of this program. Now, we don't have all the details meshed out or meted out. The Carter County Commission passed a resolution just a few weeks ago to use some of that money, about $7,500, to commission a study so that we'll know what the operating costs are going to be every year. Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services has some grants that are outstanding that we're applying for that will give us about $1.5 million upfront money, and then another $1 million or $2 million recurring money for operating expenses to keep that court going. And I say that court because I anticipate what will happen is that however many of these legislative bodies agree to give us some or all of their Baby Doe money, that there will be a board established, and I think it's through the 1st Tennessee Development District, right? That there'll be a subset of that, a board created underneath that umbrella of either the mayor or their designee of the people who actually give us money, and then they will be the ones who say how the money is spent. Not the judges, but they will be the ones. We will run the court, and I think what will have to happen is we'll have to develop a court specifically for the Rome Mountain facility. It won't just be my court doing it, or Judge Street or Judge Rice. So I think there'll have to be a court there, and we want to, I don't know how many we'll take to begin with. I think it's going to depend on the resources that we ultimately get, what that financial outlook is as to what it's going to cost to run it. And but what we envision is that people who come into our courts who need long-term residential treatment, we can send there instead of having to send them to Nashville. Okay? And then what would happen is, just like our recovery court, our local recovery court, where I meet them once a week, we will probably rotate it so that between Judge Rice, Judge Street, and I, and Judge Boniface, who's in the 3rd District in Hamlin County, that we'll rotate it so that then we'll go once every, maybe I'll go up there once every month or once every couple of weeks, and I will hold court there with those individuals. We haven't fleshed it all out yet, but we want to have a certain number of beds out of that facility for mental health. And I think what we'll have to do is that treatment court will have to have a component of a mental health court. There are several of those around the state. That way we can actually have the mental health people coming up. We want to engage with as many partners as we can for the services, like Ballad Health for medical services, Frontier Health for mental health services, Families Free for the treatment services. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of moving parts to put together for this program. But I think it's something that we desperately need. We could have a huge program like that for men, and we'll need one for women. And Families Free is working on putting together a separate grant proposal to have a smaller scale size program for women here in Northeast Tennessee. Any questions? Man, I've been talking for... Yes, yes, I saw your hand first.
I think I understood in one of your